Welcome to Jefferson Liberty Radio, the voice of the state of Jefferson in the Central Valley. I'm Matthew, joined as always by Pat.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Matt. Nice to Matthew.
Matthew.
What did I call you Matt for?
I
I've never called you
me.
Matt.
No, my name's
Matthew. Forgive me.
Aaron's joining us as well. Aaron, how are you?
Great. How you doing, guys?
We do have John as well. But first, this episode of Jefferson Liberty Radio is sponsored by Al Certified Safe and Lock. Al's offers locksmithing services and alarm systems for a range of applications including burglary, fire, tamper, medical emergencies, and much more. Al's has been locally owned and managed in Modesto for nearly 70 years, and with thousands of loyal and satisfied customers, you can be sure Al's not only will meet, but exceed your needs. For more information, call 1-800-700-4780 or go to alsalarm.com. That's ALSALARM.com. Thank you so much to Al Certified Safe and Lock for sponsoring our show.
Just a little bit of a side bar here. We had a death in our Jefferson family of one who was very well respected, and we loved him dearly. Alan has passed away, and if we could just have we're just going to have a little bit, a moment of silence for our dear departed friend and who we will miss terribly. Oh,
Alan, you're going to be missed. We miss
we love
you
you dearly. Heaven is welcoming you into their. He was just a gift from God. That's the only way I can say. I can only say it. He was a gift from God, and I loved him. Loved him as so many people loved him.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well,
real quick before we get to that,
we go.
I do want to put out there. Some of you may be aware of some of the just crazy goings on. Whenever you have a movement like this, where a bunch of people getting together, things get messy sometimes. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we were promoting on our podcast and make clear in our message, we are Jefferson Liberty Radio. We are for Jefferson, for the purposes of liberty. We are a radio show, even though it's an internet radio show. But anyhow, that aside, what we would like to call everybody to, and this, we hold ourselves to this standard as well, putting aside any of the personal conflicts that we may have had in the past with others, both within our county, outside our county, and just everybody inside the movement. Our goal is liberty and to get this state of Jefferson off the ground. And if we're too busy fighting about personal issues, we're going to destroy ourselves from the inside out. So we just want to put that out there, that is our goal. We are Jefferson Liberty Radio.
For the state of Jefferson. Thank you, Matthew. That was very well said, and I wholeheartedly agree. Well, tonight we're going to talk about Articles the First, and if anybody knows anything about Article the First, I will commend you because I had no idea what it was. But we have
a link that people can go to and read about it. If you haven't read about it, you might want to stop here. Go find that link and read about it. We'll put that in the show notes so you can stop and take a break, and then you can come back to this.
Fantastic, yes, and with podcasts you can do that. But John, however, has made himself very well educated on this issue, and I'm not sure where you want to start tonight, John. So I'll give you just a little bit of. Maybe a little bit of history about what Article the First is or something like that.
Put me on the spot.
I am. I have to. You are my interviewer tonight. Interviewee.
Articles of the First was first off, we have to start out with when the Constitution was sent to the states. It was sent with 12 articles. We know them now as amendments. They were called articles when they were sent out. There were 12 articles. Article of the First dealt with representation. Our founders believed that representation was of utmost importance. The second article dealt with legislative pay raises. At the time of ratification, only 10 articles passed muster with the states, and those were now known as the Bill of Rights. Nevertheless, Articles of the First and Articles of the Second no less important today than they were then. Unfortunately, at the time, they were not ratified. I don't know off the top of my head if it was 1992 or 1996. Articles of the Second became ratified and became our last amendment to the Constitution. The number slips my head. I want to say 27th Amendment, possibly. Maybe someone can check. Matthew can let us know for sure. But that was ratified by a requisite number of states in 1992. So we can still affect change and bring common sense representation levels to the Constitution through ratification of Articles of the First.
And how many states do we need for that to happen, John? 27?
At this point, all my research shows that we would need 27 more states to ratify Articles of the First and make it a constitutional amendment requiring a specific number of representatives for a specific, up to a certain point. Now, we've already far surpassed what that requisite number would be.
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick fact check here, 27th Amendment. You are right, and that was passed in 1992.
So nice. Way to
It
go.
took 203 years for it to become law.
Wow. So if it took
Right.
203 years for that to happen, why can't we get Articles the First?
Exactly.
This is not, as has been referred to me by others, as a dead issue. I personally feel this is our most important issue. Without a amendment to the Constitution requiring a ceiling on representation, we're left to Congress. Now, mind you, Congress is the House of Representatives and the Senate of the United States passing legislation or law, statute that dictates what our representation is.
Yes. And they're at this point, I can't see a democratically held Congress in the House of Representatives, or even a Republican majority in the Senate. I can't see them deciding that more people should be in those chambers.
Well,
Is that kind of what you think?
Yeah, representation is a nonpartisan issue.
Okay, that's
Okay?
true.
Regardless of party that's in power
Absolutely.
at the time, neither party wants Articles of the First to be a reality. They don't want representation levels under what we have now because it destroys their power.
Yes.
Things are pretty evenly matched in this country. We go through swings from, Republican party control to Democrat party control, and those swings are pretty even if you look throughout history.
Yes, you're right.
So they have us since 1913 was the last time the House was reapportioned. That was based on the Apportionment Act of 1911. In 1928,
Don't have
I
all.
believe
the figures,
it's
but
1929.
29.
Congress made the Apportionment Act an evergreen type of situation. It just keeps reaffirming itself. Been since that time when they set the House of Representatives at 435 representatives. Well, now that gives us an average representative ratio of one representative for 710,000 people. That's just astronomically high. These people cannot possibly have any ideal of representing any of us.
Right.
They represent themselves and their own opinions.
They do. They do. And their own, yes, exactly. I have a question for you, and I guess, Matthew, you can maybe weigh in on this if if anyway, the question is, we prefer a smaller government. So if we get the articles the first, get that passed or ratified, excuse me, would that necessarily make our government bigger? Because a lot of people think that it would make our government a bigger government. Would you think that would be the case?
Of course, size of government would increase. Of course, you're going to need more staff to assist those representatives. Here's the key, though. If you only answer or speak for 50,000 people as opposed to 710,000 people, you need a much smaller staff to do so. You don't necessarily need a staff in D.C. and a staff in your home district. Why, when you only have 50,000 people to answer to, would you not just need a staff in your home district? You're in Washington for 3-4 days a week. Or why do you even need to be in Washington for weeks at a time?
Yeah.
You wouldn't need to. It was never established that this is a full-time job. This is a public service. This is not a way to get rich. Now,
well, that's way, but it kind of has become that, hasn't it?
Right. So I guess what we first need to discuss is, what was Articles of the First? What did Articles of the First actually say?
Okay.
What Articles of the First actually said was, as there is a ceiling, or there is a floor on representation in the Constitution of one representative, no more than one representative for 30,000 people, there is no ceiling. And what Articles of the First essentially did was place a ceiling on representation. It said that there would be one representative for every 30,000 people, up to 100 representatives. That would have been 3 million people in the United States at the time. So once we reach 3 million people, then representation ratio would have went from 1 for 30,000 persons to 1 for 40,000 persons, up until the point as we reached 200 representatives, or 8 million people. Now, Articles of the First stops at the next step, which is 1 for 50,000 persons, or 300 representatives, 400 representatives, 500 representatives, whatever the case may be. But that covered up to 15 million people. Now, many folks will tell you that our founders envisioned this country growing, but the technology at the time, these were farmers. These were local bankers. I don't believe they could have envisioned there being 308,700,000 people on this continent with the way that food was at the time. Personal farms, personal ranches, 15 million was acceptable. That was as far out as they had to think. Well, even if even the case, that would have been 15 million people. If we went by that 50,000 to 1 today, we'd have 6,174 representatives in the House of Representatives. Now, you asked, big government question. In my opinion, that would be too large of a government. But at the same time, maybe Articles of the First need not be ratified, but we need to propose a constitutional amendment carrying that pattern down through.
Mm-hmm.
Because our framers allowed us the process to do so.
So you're looking at a government that would be...
Well, if we continued that pattern, for every 100 representatives, we increase the representative ratio by 10,000 to 1. Then today, if we carried that pattern through, we'd be at approximately 1,700 representatives. Now, with the technology we have today, that's plenty doable.
That is doable. That is doable.
And that would drastically change how Washington worked.
And that's our ultimate goal, isn't it?
Well, if we want any state split movement to come to fruition, be it Jefferson, be it Liberty in Washington, be it Lincoln in Illinois, be it any of those movements, it's going to take a vote from not only both houses in the state capitol, the state Senate, the state assembly, okay? And that's a bill in those houses that has to be reconciled with each other and then signed by, who do we have now? Gavin Newsom, okay?
Not going to happen.
I'm not going to say, don't never say never.
Okay, I won't.
Now, once that happens, under an Article 4, Section 3 state split, it has to go to both houses of Congress. Some people in this movement understand in their own mind that Congress is simply the House of Representatives, just because we call them Congress people, congressmen or congresswomen. That's not the case. The Constitution of the United States clearly says Congress is the House of Representatives and the Senate. Both houses of Congress have to say it's okay for a state split movement to occur. Then that goes to the president. This is how things happen in this country. And we're not discussing this issue in the movements. Not in the movement of Jefferson is anyone saying this is what has to happen. Regardless of what processes we have in place, these things must happen to be constitutional state split movement. And at this time, while I support a state split movement, and while I believe California needs to be broken to smaller states, we're not going to get it with 435 people in the House of Representatives. People, let's realize that. To make all our dreams and goals of representation possible, we have to hold our representatives accountable, and we have to tell them we want to see something similar to the Articles of the First pattern put in place. If they won't put it up, we need to call for a convention of states and have it put up.
Well, convention of states is happening right now, but they're meeting for a different. They're asking for a different. What are they? What is that? The
Convention of States.
Convention of States. They are the issue because you can only do one issue when you go to the Convention of States.
I don't know.
Okay.
Well, it's my understanding that they can convene on one issue, but once convened, what in the Constitution keeps us from bringing up other things? Nothing.
All right, Article 5 of the U.S., it says, a national effort to call a convention under Article 5 of the United States Constitution restricted to proposing amendments that will impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit its power and jurisdiction, and impose term limits on its officials and members of Congress. So that's a whole nother thing that needs to be addressed, but that's something separate.
Okay. Well, I feel really bad that I don't know that answer. Why? Because there is only one issue, and I believe it's I can't remember. I feel but in the meantime,
we'll have a link to it, so you can go to the website. Please. You can read about it.
Do go to that, because that is very important, and we're gaining states, and we need I think they need like 13 more states to have a convention of states. Don't quote me on that one either.
That sounds close to right to me.
Like 13. Okay. Well,
here's another thing.
Okay.
And so we talked about the Apportionment Act 1911.
Right.
It took effect in 1913. Mm-hmm. That set us at 435 representatives in the House of Representatives. At that time, had Articles of the First been in place, we would have had 1,470 representatives.
At that, in 1929.
Oh, 1911.
1911.
When they took the 1910 census and made the Apportionment Act in 1911, it didn't become law until 1913, or they didn't implement it until 1913. So in 1910, based on the Articles of the First, we would have been at 1,470 representatives.
Yeah, I see.
Not that it came to fruit, that wasn't a possibility. At that point, they got to they, as Congress, determined what our representation was. My issue is our representatives are telling us what our representation is. Doesn't say the representatives of the people will determine how this government functions. It says we the people of the United States. Well, problem is we haven't been
People.
taking care of our duties.
We haven't been doing that, holding them accountable. Wow, a concept that has come around. We need to start doing that.
I personally discussed this issue with Representative Josh Harder. How many other people in this room have?
Not I.
Not I.
Okay. Well, then we better do that.
We should do that.
Is representation not the core belief in the state split movement, in the
Absolutely.
movement to separate from the state of California?
Exactly what we want.
Representation is the
we
silver
all-
bullet.
Right? That's what is said. That representation is the silver bullet. Nothing will happen without representation. But at the same point, we have to fix it on a federal level.
And I'm beginning to come around to that idea.
Right, but if I'm the only one out of 4, 25% of the people in this room have contacted our House of Representatives member about this issue, then we have a problem.
We do have
because
a problem.
they feel only 25% of us 4 would feel that way, and I get told I'm even less of the 750 some thousand people he represents. I'm told it's not an issue.
By Josh Harder.
By Mr. Harder, and we have to make it an issue. Now, whether he's used those words, this is not an issue, or ignored me, it's the same statement.
Mm-hmm.
The man has my phone number. The man will not entertain a phone conversation with me on this issue. His chief of staff has my phone number.
Mm-hmm.
They will not discuss this with me. The most important thing, our only guarantee in the Constitution that it's our government. My government's not listening to me. This is an important topic, not only for the state split movement, but more importantly, for our voices to be heard as they were intended to be heard.
Right.
You can come here and you can talk about water, and you can talk about the little kids getting the internet in Knight's Ferry all day long, Mr. Harder. But if you're not willing to entertain representation in this issue, where since the country has grown by leaps and bounds since 1911 and 1929, our representation has not.
It hasn't, and it's not reasonable, and it's not there.
You're going to use the word reasonable.
Reasonable.
I'm going to use the word unacceptable.
Okay.
It's not acceptable.
Okay, I like that. It's like the word fair. I have eliminated that word from my vocabulary. Some things aren't fair. No, most things are not right. There's a right and a wrong. So I use those words anyway. I digress. I apologize, guys. You know what else I was looking at when I was going into some of my research into this issue? I was looking at the House of Representatives and the amount of staffers that each representative has, and I noticed that. And I'm just going to give you a few years here. Back in 1893. At the House of Representatives had maybe 1 or 2 staffers, and they may not have been full time at that. In 1975, each House of Representative had 18 staffers. Well, so anyway, it breaks down into this, and I'm getting all this information from the Cato Institute. The number of congressional staff is a real problem. That's the name of the article, and it was back in March 26th of 2010. This article was, but it came down to the fact that we have over 12,314 staffers as of that happened in that we had in 2011.
We'll throw that link into.
Yeah, it's really a good article. It's an eye opener because you would not believe how much these people are even getting paid, and some of them are getting paid more than a congressional representative. Thank you. And that is outrageous. I'm sure that a lot of people don't have that. That.
Well, here's the issue. They have staff in Washington, D.C. They have staff in their district.
Right.
They may have more than one set of staff in their district because the districts are so large and have to service so many people. Okay, so like I've said, it's my idea that we need to continue that pattern of 10,000 increases every 100 representatives. It's my position that we need to be at 1,700 representatives. Well, the representation ratio at 1,700 representatives puts us at one representative for 190,000 people. At 190,000 people, you're representing very, very small percentage of what you're currently representing at 710,000.
And actually it goes down to the fact that these representatives are we're being represented by staffers. Staffers are the people who are doing are representing our needs and our wants.
But are you being represented by a staffer?
No, well,
you're being placated.
Exactly.
They're listening to what you say for the few minutes that they allow you to be on their phone before they chase you off of it.
And they're deciding what's important or not, or if you have to say what you have to say is important or not.
Right. I'll write down your concerns and let the representative know.
Yep.
No, you won't. You haven't even picked up a pen this whole conversation because you know that it's not of utmost importance to my representative.
Mm-hmm.
My representative will come to this district and he will talk about how important it is that one vote and one voice, that everyone have an equal say. But we don't have an equal say. We don't. Some states have many, much fewer population than them we have in California. There are states in this union that have less than the average of the representatives in population. They have, let's say, 510,000 people in their state. They still guaranteed one representative. So what would be the case in say, Colorado is not the case in California. I'm disproportionately represented.
Yes.
And my representative doesn't see this as an issue. This is an issue.
It definitely is an issue with the state of Jefferson.
My voice counts less in the House of Representatives than the voice of someone from Colorado.
Colorado, I would use
one vote, one voice. Now, my representative happens to be Josh Harder. He happens to be a member of the Democrat Party, the party that says democracy, democracy, democracy. We do not have a democracy. The only House of Congress that acts in a democratic manner or a democracy style is the House of Representatives, yet they refuse to take up new legislation to reapportion the House.
Yeah, they will. Well, I don't even know if that issue has even been brought up.
I've brought it up to him. I can't be the only one in the nation bringing this up to the representative.
True. Yeah. So what I'm saying is the citizens have brought this up, but it hasn't been brought up on the floor. That's what I meant by that. So, it needs to be brought up. And, we need to find someone who is brave enough to bring it up. I have a feeling it won't be Josh Harder. I have a feeling.
We had Ted House on this show
several
Ted weeks
House.
ago.
Yep.
And
Yes.
if you go back to that episode, I
And what did
asked
he
him these
say?
types of questions. The man said he would bring forth legislation to the
Exactly.
floor on the importance of representation.
Yes, he would.
The man said he would carry my water. Where Josh Harder will not carry my voice, Mr. Howes said he would carry my voice. These are the people that we need to put in place, not only in California, but in the United States House of Representatives and Senate. These people that will represent us, that will represent our ideals. That's why I ask these people when we interview them if they would do these things, because guess who's going to hold them accountable to that?
You, John.
You think if Mr. Howes wins and doesn't carry that legislation to the floor that he'll get my vote a second time?
No, I would have to say no.
Do you think he thinks that I wouldn't make that phone call? Because I'm pretty sure he knows I would be a bigger thorn in his side.
Yes.
I'm a thorn in Mr. Harder's side. They just flat refuse to listen.
That is so sad. I hope people are listening to this. It's kind of a lot to learn, a lot to know. As far as, you go through the numbers, it's kind of difficult for someone like me to grasp.
Well, listen.
Yeah,
This
but
is-
It's hard when it's not visual.
there you go.
So that's why I
Right.
would definitely encourage people, go read the links that we have
There
in
you
our
go.
show notes.
Yeah.
Those are going to be really, really helpful. We might be able to post a picture of what John's holding in his hand that would kind of explain some things, just in a visual format. But I know for me, it's hard for me to see that. So definitely, if you're
Good.
listening to this, take a break, go look at those links that are in the show notes. Those are really important.
Very important.
And the other important thing that to get out here is that the 435 reps in the House of Representatives, that directly contributes to the number of electors for President of the United States.
The electoral.
Everyone wants to change the Electoral College. That's not the answer. The Electoral College is a wonderful, wonderful system devised by men much more intelligent than we have running things today. The system, the reason that many people feel the president is not duly elected or is not of the popular voice is because of the artificial nature in which Congress is holding our representation back. Now there's no amendment telling them how they need to apportion representation. They do have a responsibility to us to increase the number of representatives at what interval they deem necessary. They are choosing to hold this system hostage, to hold our voices hostage by not reapportioning the House. That in turn would reapportion at the same time the numbers for Electoral College. Okay? Because there are 538 electors for president. There's 100 senators. There's 435 representatives. There's an elector for each of those. That's 535 persons. Okay? DC gets an elector. There's a couple other things that get you an elector. Right now we're at 538. Many states have winner take all. I don't believe that was ever the ideal of the Electoral College system, except for the founders left that up to us to decide as states how we were going to apportion those. So this subject dives into a lot of different areas and a lot of places where people want things changed. People want the Electoral College changed. we can increase the number in the Electoral College under my system to over 1,700 electors.
Yes.
If we make amendment or pressure our representatives to increase the House size, we make the presidential election, and we make that more representative of the popular vote. Now, I personally don't necessarily agree with the vote of the populace, but when we take care of representation, we also take care of many people's issues with who's president, who's not president. And let me say, we take care of this. It's not a two-party system. Now we have enough people involved as representatives that I can honestly tell you I see 4 or 5 political parties in our system.
And I believe that would be a good thing. It would be a good way to be represented.
Well, what do they say? You can't get nothing done in Washington. Well, it's because Washington wants nothing to get done.
Right.
Okay?
Status quo.
Never was supposed to be status quo, was it?
Exactly. No.
It's supposed to be you go there and you make the best decision for your constituency. You make the best
that does
decision.
Not happen.
No, based on what the folks in your district would like to see.
Right.
Okay? So here we go. We don't got that now. And we're stuck at 2 parties that really don't want to get anything done. I don't believe our founders wanted anything to get done. They put in place a system where it was very difficult to actually get something done. This is our Constitution. These are the rules we live by. And it should be difficult to change it. It should be difficult to make a law and get it passed.
Right.
But we've frozen the House at a point where, well, now we can just put, a majority by 1 in the House of Representatives and a majority by 1 in the Senate, and we can do whatever our little group wants. Our group of 51.
Right.
Or our group of 260-something, 270-something people.
I just had a brain.
Well,
and I go ahead, John.
Never how it was intended to function. And it was never intended to be a full-time job. You were in your district unless you were called to Washington to act.
Right.
Are we being attacked? Are we at war? Do we need to declare war on somebody? We'll call you to Washington. We'll have that discussion. And we'll either go to war or we won't go to war. Is there a national emergency? Do we have fire ravaging this part of the nation and we have to discuss emergency funds to assist them? We'll call you to Washington.
Yeah.
Then we'll send you home.
Then you send you home.
Do we need a constitutional amendment for representation? Do we need a constitutional amendment for term limits? Do we need a constitutional amendment to limit the size of the district's staff? Then we'll call you to Washington and ask you to put forth legislation to the states asking them to amend the rules, but never intended for it to be what it is today.
Right. And I just remembered Convention of States is for term limits, to bring term limits. So I feel.
And Ted House told us on this very show how he feels about that.
Right.
And
yes, he did.
Ted Cruz, another Ted.
Another Ted.
I love all these Teds.
I have lots of
They're
Teds.
They're standing up for us.
They are. That's right. That's
you
right.
know, hey, they both, 2 Teds, want term limits.
Yep, that's right. Well, and we have Ted Brandvold for the mayor of. There's another Ted. How about that?
Look at all these Teds.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, I'm telling you right now, this is our answer.
That's our answer.
Many of our state split movements are arguing a state's Article 4, Section 3 state split based on Article 4, Section 4, that we do not have a Republican form of government. Well, guess what? We have it. We may not like it, it's our job to change it. And if we want these state split movements to occur, we got to start the federal level.
I'm agreeing with that.
Absolutely. Yep.
Matthew,
Absolutely agree.
Well, I've been told by people in positions of authority in all these movements that it's a dead issue.
it is.
It's not
That's
a
what
dead
they
issue.
say.
It's the number one issue.
It seems to me like it would be a better way to start getting better representation, and which is what we want for the state of Jefferson. Let's start it, like you said, at the federal level is where
I'm telling
we need
you
to
right
be.
now,
Yep.
the place to start in the congressional district of many of our listeners is Representative Josh Harder's office. You can
Exactly.
call them and tell them that one of the men that you listen to on a regular basis on Jefferson Liberty Radio has an idea to increase house size. You need to call that man. They know my name. They know my number. If they lost it, they can get it off the caller ID. I call often.
That's it, John.
They can look on their
John.
Facebook Live feed. I ask
There
the
you go.
question every time he has a town hall on Facebook Live. He knows who to contact. He knows how to get a hold of me. And I'll carry the water, but I need your help to do it.
Isn't that just dumbfounds me, because I he is, you hear what John is saying. We need representation. He is our representative, and he is not listening.
Mm. She's at a
What do
loss
we-
for words.
I
She's
am
sitting
at a
there
loss
trying to
for
find
words.
words.
It's
Which
because there's so
happens
many
a lot.
It's because there's so many people that don't listen to what I have to say. They dismiss my ideals, or my ideas because they may require work.
Well,
More importantly, is that they're constitutional ideals. What you're
Absolutely.
espousing
Yours is-
isn't anything that's way off the rails and like crazy. It's just constitutional ideals.
Hey,
But like
absolutely.
you said, it takes
I
work.
don't care what political
True.
party you belong to.
No.
I don't care how you vote. That's your personal decision. But I do care if you're educated. I do care if you know what you're entitled to. We are entitled to so much more than what they give us. And we have to stand up for each other.
that
no
doesn't
one
make
else
us an
will.
Right.
entitlement society, does it? It just makes us want what we are
What's
supposed to
outlined
get.
for us in the U.S. Constitution.
Exactly.
Which
Exactly.
is said to be the supreme law of the land in the state of California through
Yep.
our state of California
Yes.
Constitution.
Yep.
yes.
But we
That's
can
it.
fix nothing if we're not willing to fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're outside of California District 10, look up your representative. Call them. Push this ideal with them. Have them call me. I'm sure they can find me all over Josh Harder's page.
Yes.
They can contact me on Facebook.
Not difficult.
Facebook.
Facebook.
They can contact me through Josh Harder. It's fine. But contact me. Contact somebody. Let's get the ball rolling on this.
Just say you want articles first. You want what's it you're entitled to. Better representation.
Well, do you honestly think 1 for 50,000 is the answer at 327 million people?
One for 50,000 one representative for 50,000 people.
Right? That would put us at 6,174 representatives.
I think that's doable. I think that it's not
Especially with the advent of
ideal.
technology.
well,
exactly.
It's really, really easy to fit that number of people in that room with technology. Even physically,
right.
pretty sure it's possible.
I've already said that at the time, 15 million.
Yep.
They reached out there and they made a decision. How many people do we think this continent can support?
Mm-hmm.
Now, time and time again, many organizations, many people have said we are overpopulated. Well, that's the same principle they're going back to. The number of people our founders believed that this country once it reached sea to sea, because they had envisioned that, they all had expectations that this would be a cross-continental country. Okay? So you can't go where, oh, well, they had no idea it'd get all the way over to California. No, they absolutely wanted that. Who was it with the Louisiana Purchase? Thomas Jefferson, was it not?
Thomas Jefferson. Mm-hmm.
That was a large territory. That brought us into the Midwest.
Yes, it did.
They knew back then it was going sea to sea. What they didn't realize is that we would shove so many persons in that land.
Right, right.
Okay?
John, this is a very important issue. One that I had not thought about until it was brought up to me, and I really hope that people will start doing their homework on it, because this is probably the best way we can possibly get better representation federally and through the state of Jefferson.
And I'm sure we're going to be back talking about
we
this.
We do need
again.
to talk about this again. One other thing is, if you have any questions about this, I mean, certainly get onto a find. I'm
going to give our contact info in just a few.
Go.
That's the best way to get a hold of us.
That's it. Contact us. Ask us a question or two, because we certainly, if we don't know it, we're going to look it up. So we'll stop for tonight, and thank you for listening, and thanks, John, for all of your hard work and dedication to this really important issue.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
No problem.
And
it's our duty, our responsibility to
why, yes, it is.
Take care of the situation.
Right.
Agree.
Absolutely.
Right. So thanks again to everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of Jefferson Liberty Radio. If you or anybody that you know of is interested in sponsoring our show, we are always looking for sponsors. This show wouldn't be without our sponsors. You can email us at sponsors@jeffersonlibertyradio.com. As we mentioned before, you can get in touch with us. We would love to hear your questions or comments. Email us at feedback@jeffersonlibertyradio.com or via our website, again, jeffersonlibertyradio.com. Don't forget to subscribe to us in iTunes or your podcast player of choice, wherever you listen to this. If you're listening to it, especially if you're listening to this on our website, download your podcast player, put it in there so that you get these episodes directly down into your phone every single week. Leave us a 5-star review in iTunes or those places where you are able to. We'd really appreciate it, and it actually does help our ratings in those places. You can find us on all the typical social media, Facebook, Twitter. You can find our episodes on Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, and even some alternative media such as BitChute. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Jefferson Liberty Radio, and we'll catch you next time.